about podcasting and journalism. I am Rob Southgate. I am co-owner of Southgate Media Group, which is a podcast, blogging, et al. Media company. And I am co-owner with, we'll get to her right down there. Why don't we go right down the line and introduce who we are and kind of what we do, where you come from, and then we'll get into the meat of what's going on here. So, let's start with you, Frank.
Sure. Hi, Frank Stella here, and I'm mainly a podcaster. I'm also an audio editor, which I do sometimes. And let's see, I did the Dracula podcast back in the fall, which was fun, and then I did the
Hashtag cool.
Falling Skies podcast this summer, and looking forward to what's coming next.
With me, which was fun.
Hi, I'm Blair Graves. I am the associate editor of ShowRatings.tv as well as the director of social media. I run the feature TV binges. You can check in every month to live tweet 8 episodes of a TV show straight with me. And I run the podcasts, The Strain podcast and The Rose Comfy Sweater, a grim podcast.
Not that it's grim, it's about the show grim.
Which is hilarious.
You didn't know, did you? Mind blown.
Of course, I'm the one that gets cut off.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm Brandon Carlson, WeKnowGames.com. I'm a games journalist and podcaster for obviously the WeKnowGames.com podcast. I've done in the past GamesAreFun.com, Empire. I've been published in GamePro under a pseudonym, which I'd rather not share because they were awful. And yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for coming.
My turn. I'm Martha Southgate, and I co-own Southgate Media Group, and I podcast a lot of shows. And I used to write a zine, which is what got us here.
We'll get into that.
And that was, so we hosted a panel 19 years ago.
This is actually called
here.
How We Got Here or something
Exactly.
like that.
So we've come a lot, kind of full circle in 19 years. And that's that.
Cool. No, we don't have time for you along, sorry.
Yes.
My name's Alil Knitsa. I'm the host, producer, editor of the League of Geeks podcast. We do a podcast show every week about movies, TV, video games, toy collecting, everything that a geek enjoys.
He was going to say owner, but the other guys are listening. They're not listening! Owner?
Owner.
I started the whole thing.
So, you guys were kind of, you didn't quite give the whole story on a couple of things. So I want to address with a couple of people here because it's, everybody here has been on our podcast network at Southgate Media Group and currently is doing something on Southgate Media Group. But you all come from different backgrounds, so it's not just like, hey, let's talk about our group. Blair, you mentioned ShowRatings.tv. Now, this is about podcasting and journalism. You actually started in journalism. The podcasting is a byproduct, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So, how did you get into the journalism part of it?
Well, it started in college when I single-handedly ran my student newspaper. And then I actually was writing my senior thesis, which was a 35-page paper about the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man films and how they influenced the superhero genre. Sent it to my editor-in-chief, well, now editor-in-chief, Kyle Tremblay, who is my best friend.
Oh, shut up, it was Kyle?
Yep, Kyle is my best friend in 12 years. And
Kyle's on our network.
Yeah. So he said, hey, I'm working for this website now, and you just reminded me that you're a fantastic writer. Do you want to cover a TV show for us? And started out freelance with them and just was a consultant and got, occasionally paid by article. And then I became an employee, and then I became the director of social media. So that's really fun. It's been 2.5 years now. It's been a really fun ride.
Cool. I didn't know that was Kyle, so that's news to me.
Kyle's my best
Learn
friend.
something at every panel.
And editor-in-chief.
And Blair, how long have you been podcasting?
I've been podcasting for 9 months, and I was introduced, I'm sort of a Twitter addict, I was introduced by a fellow live tweeter to Rob, and Rob invited me to come and talk about Grimm, and I brought Kyle along, and it's been wonderful ever since.
Yeah, actually, that's a story. So I assume if you're here, you're interested in podcasting, you might be thinking you want to get into podcasting or
Don't.
Yeah, that's
I'm kidding.
Yeah, oh, you can tell we hate it, and we hate being together, don't we? So, I just want to explain how that happened with Blair, because I think this is important. So, when it started, Martha and I started this a year ago. We started a year ago in July, and we had one show. We were talking about Under the Dome. And, was that an applause or a?
No, we
Okay.
actually watch it as well. So.
Do you? And have you had like stroke-like symptoms? Because this year has
Over
been
season
really
2?
difficult.
Yeah.
So we started with that, and then we thought, oh, we should, add maybe an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show. She didn't want to do it. I did. Next thing you know, all of a sudden we started, like around Christmas, we picked up a couple more podcasters, and we picked up, Walking Dead and these other shows. And then, this is why this is important. And there's right around Christmas, we're online talking to one of the people we brought from another network. It was like the first show they did. And she says, I just interviewed these really cool people. They're from Twitter. It's Blair and Kyle. You should see if they want to be on a show. And Martha says, why don't you tweet to them and see? And it was like overnight we had like 9 new podcasters because of talking to Blair and Kyle. So the reason I bring this story, and like 9 new shows, we have 40 shows in the network now. The reason I'm bringing this up is if you're looking at getting into podcasting, if you're looking at getting into journalism, or you're already doing it, you're thinking, how do I expand this world I'm in? That's how. You ask. That's like you're gonna walk away from here and go, that's all they told us was ask. That's really it.
It's all about
Ask.
Yeah,
It's all about networking. Get on Twitter. Frank and I just interviewed Doug Jones. Anyone know who that is? Like Silver Surfer and Coach Chief. So we interviewed him last night, and that was purely a Twitter connection that made that happen.
Yeah, and on show ratings, we now have 15 staffers who are writing every single week, who write features and columns and reviews, and I think probably 90% of them just approached me on Twitter and I said, hey, send me a writing sample, and then we let them do a couple of guest posts, and then eventually we brought them on as full-time staffers. And the same thing, like we get a lot of interviews with Orange is the New Black cast, and a lot of people from Enlisted and a couple of other shows, and I think we had a community one. And it's a lot of times you just tweet the PR person, or you just tweet the actor and just say, hey, I write for this thing, or I run this blog, or I run this podcast, and I want you to just come and talk to me. And usually they're pretty friendly and they want to. And social media is a beautiful thing, especially Twitter. I highly recommend if you're not using Twitter, use Twitter.
Absolutely.
Start using it.
Use it a
Well,
lot.
and that also led to a number of people that write on show ratings are now podcasting on our network. And it's the same thing. It was just those little connections and talking, and podcasting is not difficult. It's just having a conversation and just doing it, getting over the fact that you hate your voice. Trust me, I think everybody up here hates the voice, except for Frank.
Yeah.
He has a beautiful voice. I didn't know. I think I sound drunk and half crazy half the time. So.
I think I sound awful, but the best person
You do,
actually,
Brandon. I
my
didn't want to
other,
say anything.
my 2 co-hosts for the We Know Games podcast right here. Paul has the voice of a god, in my opinion. He's our dude. So
Our table wasn't long enough.
Yeah.
Otherwise they do.
I have the voice of an angel. Leave me out of it. Bye.
So I wanted to talk about that with Blair. Let's talk Frank for a second, because Frank's is different. Frank just made it sound like, oh, I podcast and do some audio editing. No,
Frank is very down to earth.
Truthfully, you're kind of a big deal.
Wait,
your Twitter handle is what? DJ Frank Stella. Frank is a DJ.
Yeah, I graduated in 2011 with a Bachelor of Science in Communication, concentrating in radio broadcasting, and so I'm a radio broadcaster. It's kind of my career, podcasting kind of on the side. I think one day though, podcasting is going to kind of take over radio, because it can be commercial free, not always, but static free.
Yeah.
But I think the real advantage is that you get to listen to it on your own time.
Yes.
You don't have to tune in at a certain time to catch the programming you want. You can download it and take it with you wherever you go, whenever you want to hear it. And that's why I think podcasting rocks. But I'll say this. Podcasting isn't something that you need to go to college for. It's not something that is real cost podcast quality microphone and set it up in my basement, but you don't need that. For
No, you
live-
don't, Brandon, what are you using?
I use a rock band mic,
Okay.
a USB rock band mic to record, and it sounds great, we think, so.
I recommend
It's editing.
I recommend one of these babies. The headphone microphone that comes with the iPhone or the phone itself. I think you want to use headphones though unless you're by yourself. But surprisingly, a pretty good quality mic for what we're doing. You can Skype through that or just record it as a voice note and pull it up in your iTunes. And I also recommend learning the basics of audio editing. You don't need to be a Nashville producer, but you can find free versions of Adobe Audition, which is standard a lot of radio stations.
Audacity, it's free.
Yes.
I do so much on Audacity.
We Know Games uses Audacity because it's free, it's
free,
great,
it's easy.
and you can download plugins for it that make editing so much easier and it makes everything sound fantastic.
And I'll just say personally, I really don't use Audacity. I don't like it. If you do, go for it. I think Adobe Audition way more user-friendly interface, but it's up to you. There's a lot of free ones out there.
GarageBand is great for Mac users.
Yeah, if you're a Mac user,
It's actually not for editing.
I edit with GarageBand. I have no problem.
You should hear his show, it's terrible. No, actually, Lily, you're gonna have to show me. This is the other thing about podcasting. It's all about like sharing these ideas.
And learning as you
And
go.
I actually went to the Mac store and talked to the geniuses, and one of the guys is a podcaster, and he couldn't figure out how to really edit with GarageBand. And I was like, I had a nightmare trying to use it. I went back to Audacity, I'm like, done, 1.5 speed, take out the silence, we're done.
Unless
okay.
it's me, and then you have to edit.
Oh my
all
God,
the time.
okay, here's another piece of advice, don't podcast with your wife. Actually, it's been a great relationship builder, it's been just a fantastic experience, but
Don't
But no, here comes
podcast
the
with your
but.
wife with ADD. That's the
she
problem.
can't help but fold paper and talk to the cats and
Shiny
everything
object.
else while we're trying to podcast. So where I do a show with Frank, and it takes me, if it's an hour show, it takes me about a half hour to edit, put the music and everything on. It takes me an hour and a half to do the same show with my wife. Just a little advice. So anyway, I digress. Who's talking? A little.
Sorry, I was gonna say with GarageBand, for those people who want to use GarageBand, YouTube is your friend. I learned everything I needed to do on YouTube. For people who do it for business, for people who do whatever, and then I just started customizing it to what I use. So I'm telling you, people out there a lot smarter than I am who taught me how to use GarageBand through YouTube. I just kept writing down notes, and I figured it out myself. Our first show sounds terrible. It sounds like we recorded in a cathedral, like the echoing and everything, and then I figured it out. So I really need to pull that show off, but it's still up there to download.
Alil, as long as we talked about Frank, his history is radio broadcast. Alil, what's your history?
My history is business management. No, nothing with podcasting. I did in high school and everything. I wanted to get into film. The issue is money. I didn't have it. I had to work my way through college, and the only places I would pay for college were places that were in business. So I got a degree in business and sold my soul. But now I'm doing this, and this is kind of like my stress release, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, I watch film, I've studied film, and that's all I've ever wanted to do. But now I've got a show with other guys where we talk about film, we talk about TV. I love collecting. I'm by no means an expert, just my opinion on things, and that's what I love about podcasting, because that's how I found podcasting, was just finding other people who just like what you like, your passion. And that's what I always tell people to do. If you need to find something that you like, if you like music, if you like this, you'll be able to find everything. Just like they were saying down there, it's going to take over radio, because we hear the same people every day on the radio, but you can get 100 different opinions.
And a lot of the people on the radio, they've been given that assignment.
Right. Yeah.
So
Passion's not there.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Like I've heard guys that say I was all of a sudden put on a show, talking about like UFOs, and I know nothing about it. But that's what they told me. They wanted me to do the 1 a.m. shift and have a paranormal show. Well, guess what? I think the guy who wants to do a paranormal show is going to be a lot more interesting. So you're right. I mean, find what your passion is and just talk about it. Don't be afraid to just start talking about it. When we did Under the Dome, it was just because we were watching it, and Martha says, maybe we should do this show. And I picked up the MP3 recorder, and we did the show. We didn't know how to put music on it. We didn't know how to edit it. We didn't know how we were getting it from this little box. Into, she still doesn't. How to get it from that little box onto the computer and then onto iTunes. Ooh. So the key is to just find something you're interested in, and don't think about it in terms of what you think is going to be popular. That's another huge one. Like, we really wanted to do one about like backyard farming. The problem is we don't know enough. That would be 10 minutes, and then I'd look like a fool, kind of like this panel. I got a laugh from my daughter.
You always get one.
But you know, that's a very viable one. Who cares if anybody's listening to it? If you have a passion for it and you start doing it, you're going to get the bug, and it's going to lead to other things. And eventually, guess what? You might actually have people that listen to it, and all of a sudden you're the expert on backyard gardening or whatever it is. I am not. Okay, so I interrupted. Sorry, Alil. Alil is my favorite punching bag for some reason.
I am not, my show is not part of the Southgate Media Group, so I get beat down a lot when I help out. And I'm on the,
Alil is on our Enough Said podcast. No, I love their show. I just tease.
So, but, you know, and that's what, you know, you have to find out what you want. And if you want to do this, it's a lot of work, but it's a passion. And you know, nobody's going to be sitting here paying you money to do it. This is something that you're going to do yourself. And like we were saying with the equipment, I have a $100 mic and a laptop, and that's it. And I'm able to edit. And our show, and I'm not bragging, but it sounds perfect. It sounds terrific, except for that first damn episode. Excuse my language. I still get so mad at that episode. But you know, and you know how, and the other two guys that are on my show, I mean, one guy's an artist and one guy pulls cable. I mean, it's just, you know, we just found a niche, and it works. And for some odd reason, people want to listen to us. I don't know why. I don't want to listen to us after I edit the show, but people do. I mean, that's all that matters. Is you're having fun with it.
Right. Martha.
Yeah.
Okay, so Martha.
I had to think about her name for a minute.
No, I was deciding because Brandon has a story here. But Martha, you touched on what we started with. So if you go back, we're talking about how we got into it, what led to it. Our journey started way before she wanted anything to do with the journey. But we're talking 20 years ago, we wrote a zine together. You want to talk about that?
No. We started out, we wrote this zine about Elvis, called the Dead Elvis Fan Club.
We weren't Elvis fans, I'm just going to clarify.
And
we were making fun of Elvis. We called it the Dead Elvis Fan Club.
And we were sitting on our couch and writing this thing, and it was dumb. But for whatever reason, we got a lot of attention, and we were actually guests of honor here at the 20th Chicago Comic-Con. But over
Believe
this
it or not, we did panels 19 years ago. This is our 19-year anniversary.
So now 19
because
years
of this thing
later,
that we wrote sitting on our couch.
19 years later, we're sitting on our couch doing podcasts.
Yeah.
It's like, we haven't actually moved. Even though there are all these things that happened between then and now, we're still sitting on our couch doing things like this. And here we are back at a panel. But
But Martha wasn't a journalist. She wasn't a performer or a broadcaster or any of those things. She was a nanny. And she just happened to marry a guy that did this stuff. But it led her to this point. And she does these shows, and she has her own shows separate from me, and they're really great. She doesn't do all that annoying stuff on her shows. It's only on the ones with me.
So what I love about podcasting is it totally feeds ADD. So if you have, I love this over here. Oh, I want a show about that. Oh, I love this. Oh, I can make them have a show about, you know, somebody's going to want to have a show about that for me, you know, and then, so each little thing I can then either delegate it out and find people who have a passion for it, or I can do it myself, and it allows me that outlet. So I love it for that. It's really, I think it's a healthy way to kind of de-stress from the rest of your life and the things that, you know, your day job or whatever you have to do.
How many podcast concepts have you and I and Michael come up with and not done yet?
Yeah.
You know, it's ridiculous.
It's very ADHD.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have
It
lists.
feeds it.
We have
We go
lists.
through like the Blair night, we'll call it the Blair night, Blair with an E night.
The Blair Witch.
There must have
That's-
been 20 different
Since I was 11
podcast
years old.
ideas. There must have been 20 different show ideas when I'm talking about what your passion is that came through from everybody. And I mean, I just remember that night in particular because all of a sudden we ballooned with all these new shows. But there are so many things that came out that night that never saw the light of day. They're still hanging around. Case in point, the Feels podcast.
So many
Yeah.
feels.
I mean, who
There are
doesn't
so
have
many
feels?
Feelings that got talking out. And this was a little Twitter conversation or a little, I don't know, message conversation. And Martha, it was like 11:30 at night,
It's on
Martha says,
Facebook.
get up, you're not going to bed, they want to do the Feels cast. And I went right downstairs and I created artwork for it. And that was it. Do we think we have a Feels cast? Yes. Is it one of the 40 yet? No. But it's somebody's going to be passionate about it. We're going to have that. Once again, just jump in. Just do it.
Yeah.
That's the key. And with Martha, I mean, you can see this is not somebody who was into that. She got into it through a different way. But here we are, owning a network, and I mean, she's doing it. It's pretty cool.
And there aren't that many things you can do at home in your pajamas and no one can see you. They can hear you, but
Yeah,
they
unless
don't
you do
have any.
video podcasts.
We don't
free
allow
rein,
video
yeah.
podcasts.
Yeah.
That's a no-no.
Yeah.
But you know, just being able to
Clothing
hang
option.
out in your
Yeah,
pajamas.
we did a live podcast today at a party group, and we'll tell you guys about that in a little bit. But I think it might be the first that I've done in pants. Let's just leave it at
Well,
that.
you're just not Ninja Turtle.
Yeah, I
You just
usually
don't
wear
know.
pajama pants. all the time.
Now wearing your superhero ones.
All right, keep it down in front. All right, Brandon, I want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Now, Brandon gave a brief synopsis of his entree into this. When I met Brandon, it was
Last year.
1 year ago, and we were podcasting for another group, and not Brandon and I, Martha and I, and Frank and I, not you guys. And Brandon walked up and he said, "Oh, I own this game website, and we do game blogging, and I'd like to do a podcast. I've done some podcasts in the past." And I said, "Okay, not my booth. You can talk to the other guy." He wasn't interested. We were. And that was the entree, once again, just talking about it. But
Don't
then I
take
got
no
to know-
for an answer. Find somebody who
Yeah,
will
if they
say
say
yes.
no, if it's not a good
Somebody
fit.
will say yes.
Yeah, somebody will say yes, or do it yourself. That's what we did. We just figured it out. We didn't have to join a network. We created a network so we could create opportunities. To us, it's like a ministry. We like to bring people in and let them be creative, do their thing, you know? But you don't have to. You can get a Libsyn account. I don't know if you know what Libsyn is, but you can get a Libsyn account, and you can start making your own podcast tonight.
And I'd just like to say, you can do that. You know, I could have done like the Dracula podcast, uploaded it to my personal SoundCloud, it would have sounded fine, but I'd be trying to, you know, get my mom to listen. I think it's really beneficial because here we are in the information age, and what really gives you an edge is having a community. And so I recommend, if you can, and you can, joining with a podcasting community like Southgate Media, who will give you opportunities. It's not going to turn you down and say no to you, unless you're terrible.
Or
But
it's really weird.
They're not going to turn down your idea, you know.
It's got to be pretty weird for us not to take it.
So I recommend joining a community that's going to give you, you know, make you part of kind of like a Walmart podcast where you know,
Yikes.
we have I mean,
Just
like
call
with
us
Dracula,
Walmart.
I had hundreds of listeners that weren't my friends and family. I mean, I didn't know who was listening, but it was just part of that
Come on
community
in.
that made it drew people in, and from there they could see the other podcasts that others were doing or join themselves. And I think the community aspect is really important. So
Yeah,
just my
that's
message.
another panel, whether you do network or not.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
and also think about the content that you're creating and the way that you're putting that content out. I'm the social media person here, so make sure that you have good practices with your SEO. Make sure, which is search engine optimization. If you're titling something, it's like Monroe's Comfy Sweater is not the most SEO friendly podcast. That is a fun podcast for Kyle and I to do. The Strain podcast, we named it because we knew that people are going to be typing into Google this brand new show that Guillermo del Toro is doing, and Guillermo del Toro is a powerhouse of awesome. People are going to want to listen to commentary on that. So think about the names you're talking about, like the Dracula podcast, things like that, but also add a little bit of fun. But then meet your communities. Like I said before, like I've met a lot of my writers just through Twitter, but I also, I have a couple thousand people online who I talk to every day just about the things that they love. And that's like, go on Tumblr, go on Twitter, go on Facebook. The Orange is the New Black Facebook group is crazy if you're an Orange is the New Orange is the New Black person. Go and find your community, and they're going to want to consume your content. It's not just creating the content, but it's getting the content out there and being.
Well, and also when you're talking like TV shows or movies, the other thing is the people that make them. Like our very first interview, the very first episode we put out of Under the Dome, we got a tweet from
Agatha Warren.
Agatha Warren, who's one of the producers, and the day after it went on, it wasn't even on iTunes, it was on SoundCloud. She tweeted us and said, "This is the coolest podcast about Under the Dome. You guys rock." We're like, who? I think you have the wrong place.
But we had also done Zero Hour on
Yes.
another.
Well, then we find out we did
and
Zero Hour.
she was a producer
She was a
on
producer on that. She goes, "Do you guys like Zero Hour?" We're like, ironically, we do the only podcast about Zero Hour on another network.
Nazi clocks. Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Nazi clocks.
So it
Hashtag
was,
Nazi clocks. That's all about.
so it was kind of funny that we were kind of following her.
Yes,
That with
yes,
unknown.
but you make those connections too, and it's interesting how that scope has gone up in journalism first. You were not a podcaster,
Correct.
as Blair was not.
Correct. I started off back in high school actually when I was 15 years old for a very, very small website called bgforce.com. It was super tiny. It was a bunch of teenagers who wanted to talk about video games, and it was a completely a passion project. From there, we actually managed to grow that tiny little site with just a handful of people on a forum on a dark corner of the internet. We managed to, by the end of it, when it closed, 50,000 unique visitors
Wow.
in a week.
Wow.
So we actually went from really small to fairly substantial in just 2 years. That's as long as we were open, well, as long as I was involved, unfortunately.
Right.
And I loved it. It was great. Like I said, I was in high school. I didn't have any formal education on how to be a journalist. I just wrote what came to me and how I felt. I personally feel that journalism, that's what it should be. It's, you talk about your medium, but you also talk about how it makes you feel. That's the kind of journalism I practice. From there, I went to, what was it next? Empire, the Empire Media Group, which did NintendoNow.com, PSI Next, and Xbox Raw. And
you did some podcasting for them, right?
I did. I actually launched what they called the Empire eCasts. We ended up doing a different podcast for each of the 3 websites, and again, we didn't know what we were doing.
Right.
It was just, let's set up a mic,
You
let's
guys
start
sitting
talking.
here, we didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah, you learn as you go. Nobody's going to listen to your first or second podcast when you first start. You're going to have friends listening, you're going to have family listening, and then they're going to share it. You get better as you go. That's what's great about podcasting. It ties really into journalism too.
Yeah.
So.
And creating your own content online is the same thing.
Mhm.
Show Ratings TV started out, we had an investor and we built a website, but while we were waiting for that website to be built, we thought we might as well be putting content out, and we made a Tumblr page. And so we were just putting articles out on Tumblr for the sake of putting those articles out. Then eventually our website came out, and we've had a lot of success with that. But like, you need to start creating your own content, and then things can happen. You can meet other people who you can create content with, like how I
Right.
met Rob, and now I'm meeting everybody here now. And you have to put it out. You just have to be doing it on your own in order to be recognized.
And engaging that audience is actually the most important part of it. Is
Totally agree.
getting in touch with those people, getting their feedback, talking to them, because I launched the Empire eCasts before Twitter was even a thing. It was in its infancy. This was back in like 2006. So we had forums that had, they gobbled up a whole bunch of smaller sites, and you get this, but we talked to them and we get feedback. That's very important for a blog or a podcast or anything. Talking directly to your audience, ouch, you okay? Talking to that audience.
We'll
getting
edit that
feedback.
out.
Yeah, leave it its infancy. Everybody used MySpace back when I first launched this. But after that, unfortunately, I left them to go work for a small site called Games Are Fun. I did their podcast as well. They had an established podcast, but it had sat dormant for a year. I'm like, let's bring it back, and we did. We got noticed by G4 a couple of times back in the day, and things. I don't really want to go into that. That was really bad too. Like I said, as having I've never gone to college for journalism. I've always spoken from the heart and from passion. That's very important to me. So sometimes those podcasts that I am glad are gone, got a little heated.
Yeah, okay.
So that's, like I said, you can start from nothing. Like I said, I still use a rock band mic, and you can start a podcast for $0 if you have the right thing. So, and like
You can
everybody
start a
says,
whole company.
Yeah.
That way. I mean,
Figure it
we
out.
had no overhead, and everybody
Yeah.
volunteers. All the podcasters come and say, we want a podcast, and okay.
Yeah, and I
it
will
just
say
goes,
that
but there's no overhead.
as owners though of a network, there's a heck of a lot of work involved.
yeah.
And there is a lot that it seems like every day we're learning some new aspect of what we have to do. And I wish we were one show and we didn't have to do anything but focus on that one show. And we'd still be learning that much every single day, but we wouldn't have to do it across 40 shows. So it is, the ceiling of entry, or the barrier of entry is like non-existent. I mean, this is the Wild West. It's like when she was talking about us doing zines, we did zines back then. I don't know.
There was no.
Some of you are younger than zines, but some of you know what zines are.
This was in the 90s.
Yeah,
the
it was
early
just
90s. There was
self-publishing,
no.
making your own fanzines, and the barrier to entry was zero. It was, can you go to Kinko's and print?
Well, and we had to
podcasting is
mail.
very similar.
We had to mail press kits and things like that. You couldn't email anybody. You couldn't
Yeah, there was no internet.
Google a question. I mean, literally.
I actually wrote it on the back of a shovel.
It
and I
was
just had to
really
send it out.
archaic.
Very expensive sending
Very
shovelware.
difficult.
Shovelware.
Yeah. This is much easier.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, Rob.
We Know Games is a lot like that too. After I left, what was it? Games Are Fun. That's right, because they closed again because it was small. I opened We Know Games because I wanted to publish something. I wanted to stop going other places and putting my stuff on other people's websites. Since then, I've owned it for 4 years, and there's not a lot of content up on there right now because
There will be.
running it is, like Rob said, running a network is hard. Running one site for me is really difficult. But at the end of the day, when you write a good article and you know it's good and you get it out there on Twitter and it goes viral and people see it and notice it, I don't know how to explain it. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
It's a rush.
Very
So
fulfilling.
it is very fulfilling. So
Now, okay.
There's a dark side to that though, because sometimes you can put out content that people don't agree with.
yeah, I get a lot of vocal
Haters gonna
feedback
hate.
sometimes. Just ignore it.
And you really
Well,
do
I
realize.
actually feel like, yeah, to a degree you should ignore it, but I learned a lot from the criticism that I've received. I covered Game of Thrones last season, and I'm no longer allowed to cover Game of Thrones. Because I had a controversial viewpoint. But I came at it at the point though that I was a little overly passionate and I hadn't actually critically analyzed an event that had occurred in that season. And because I was, kind of trying to rush my content. So that's, I think my point here is because I come from the critic perspective, like with the journal, like for me, I have a degree in film theory. For me, it's always about coming at things with a critical perspective, thinking about the content that I want to put out there, and thinking about what I want people to know about my opinion and why that opinion should stand on its own, not just I feel this way. Which is at the same time I have feels. If you guys don't know, so many feels. Feels is the internet for feelings. So I think it's
Big
important.
basket of feels up here.
Yes. When you're putting out your content, though, try to think, do I have this controversial opinion? Do I have these thoughts that maybe are not the most, not the common thoughts? And think of the best way that you put out there. And if you do get criticism,
Should we talk about the criticism each of us have gotten?
No.
Yeah, I
But
would
learn from
absolutely.
it, but
It's
learn
awesome.
from it. That's the most important thing. If you are putting content out there, there will be trolls, and you might be feeding them on accident, but that's okay, because you're gonna learn from it, and you're gonna create better content because of it.
Anyone who's successful has haters.
Yes.
Yeah, most of the things I'm personally most proud of is on Twitter, my name has been added to a list, and I'm gonna try and keep this PC, of crap journos.
That's
Really? Yeah.
That's a
Awesome.
thing?
That's the thing.
We need to
They
put
have
that
lists
on
on
Fox.
Twitter
Put
now,
my name
and
on there.
and I got a notification about a month ago that after I'd written a particular, article that someone had said, I don't agree with this, and added me to a list of crap journals. I'm like, you know what? Someone noticed, that's all that matters to me.
All that matters.
Yeah.
Indeed.
That's kinda awesome.
Mhm.
I'd get a t-shirt with that.
Well, when we were doing our zine back in the 90s, we got a cease and desist letter from Elvis Presley Enterprises, and we were like,
That was our crowning
we
achievement.
have arrived.
The
They
midwife
noticed
told us
us.
to stop.
And so we changed the name to Disgraceland, but for us, it was just the happiest moment, because we're like, they noticed us in this world of so much noise. So when you do have those moments where it's like somebody paid attention even enough to hate me, you know what I mean? Like,
Basically what that
okay,
letter
that's
ran.
their choice, but yeah, but it's, haters gonna hate.
So, I'm gonna actually pause for a second. Does anybody have any questions or anything they'd like to ask? Anyone specific or just in general?
What kind of equipment would you recommend?
Say that again?
What kind of equipment would you recommend to start? The one we're looking at right now is actually gonna be at a comedy club. We're gonna do live.
Okay.
So I don't know if you have any experience doing live
We just did one
podcasts.
We
today.
just did one today, actually.
We can tell you what, not today, because we just did one today.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll tell you. So you're at a comedy club and you're thinking about doing it, are you doing it from like stage, microphones, that deal?
Yeah.
Okay, you got a soundboard?
Working on that right now. It's in infancy right now. We're hoping to start in November.
Okay, you get a cheap soundboard, and you get a, cause they're gonna have something there that the mic is running through, okay? There's an audio out on that, okay? There's an audio out on this little guy right here. Get a Roland R12, anybody?
It's a Roland something, the handheld.
It's a little handheld one, it's got two little microphones on the edges, it's called like a Roland, maybe it's an M12 or an R12, something
We don't
like
have
that.
internet here to look it up.
Yeah, I left it in the car.
This is just for show.
Right.
I'll tell you.
Look fancy.
You take that, it's got just a stereo MIDI plug, it's got a mic in, and it's got a headphone jack and an audio in. I don't know why there's mic in and audio in, I don't quite get it. I plug into audio in, put that into the soundboard, from the out of the soundboard, record on that. Don't mess with anything else, okay?
And this
You
Roland
will
is
get-
like $120.
Yeah, it's like $120 on eBay. It will give you fantastic sound. It has a USB or some kind of jack out. I just put it right in my Mac, bam. Then editing, like I said, I use Audacity. You could use, if you want to spend money on it, get Apple Logic, it's excellent. Frank recommended Adobe.
Adobe Audition, there's free versions out there that Adobe put out, they're legal.
It really, he's not getting paid for this. But there you go. That's what I would do. I would just get a
Bless you.
and plug it into their board.
Yeah, there's
Done.
the blue microphones, come really highly recommended, for podcasters, a lot of.
Yeah, we use that at home.
A lot of my friends who do live podcasting, like, at events, use the blues.
Now,
They're good consumer microphones.
If they're doing the blue thing, that's where you're getting into having a board and having like equipment that you're bringing. I was trying to do it total cheap. You got a soundboard there, you got a microphone, plug into that, okay? If you want more advice on that, grab a card from me at the end, we'll figure it out, okay?
We'll post something on Twitter
for like
as well.
$60.
What was that?
You can get a blue snowball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For like $60.
Yeah, and it's.
Yeah.
And the
They
snowballs
sound
sound great.
It's very
Yeah.
solid.
They're very
It's got
inexpensive.
it recently, so.
There's actually a couple of websites that sell like a podcaster starter kit. It's about $100. It comes with a small board. It comes with a decent microphone.
Yeah, it's
That'll
not
plug
bad.
into USB or it'll plug into your audio jack. It's cheap. It's great. And like I said, if you can't, rock band mic.
Well, and you can
Yeah.
use your I mean, we started out on our iPhone Skyping. I mean, you
Yeah,
can
we
really.
do a lot over Skype, so
there-
if you have the ability to do that, Frank and I originally, I just used the laptop and the microphone that was on that.
Yeah.
And he'd always say, wow, your mic sounds good. I'm like, it's the worst mic ever. It's part of my computer.
So, don't bog down too much, and I have to have something special to do this. For live podcast, you do need to.
Yeah, you gotta figure
But-
it out, but what I just said would totally work and would work beautifully.
How do you guys reserve your names?
How do we reserve our names?
Get to it first.
Yeah.
Yeah. GoDaddy.
Yeah,
Although I
okay,
don't really recommend
there's
it.
a couple of ways to do it. You go to GoDaddy, reserve your name as a website. Claire's talked about, go on,
Is
get all your
best.
social media stuff too.
Yeah, no, the moment that I come up with a podcast idea, I go and I reserve all of the SEO, the best SEO
Now, for
Twitter
the
handles.
podcast is a different animal, okay? If you go to iTunes, they're not all named The Strain Podcast. The way we got that one is, they said, can we do a Strain Podcast? Martha and I said, yeah, I mean, like, we're ever saying no. And immediately we said, do a Meet the Host episode. I don't care if it's 10 minutes. Hi, we're Blair and Kyle, we're gonna be talking about The Strain. Just stretch that out to 10 minutes.
We did it for an hour.
You take it, and you get, like, Libsyn is who I use. I've looked at other ones, Libsyn is really the best. You do Libsyn, you set up your name through that, you just basically do your whole thing. Once you have that, and it's immediate, you take you put the first show on, you have to have the first show. Put the first show on, then you take that and you go to iTunes and you hit submit a podcast. Take the RSS feed, at first it's going to say there's no feed here, try it a couple of times, and then it will say there's a feed here. And that's how you secure your name. We got Before the Bat, the Gotham podcast. I bet other people wanted Before the Bat. In fact, I know it because I saw it on the internet. I saw people looking for it. The Strain, Orange is the New Black podcast. We got that one. I don't know how we got that one. The show had been on for a year already. You need to do all the social media stuff she's talking about. You need to set up your Twitter, get an email, get all that stuff before you tell everybody the name. What's the name? And then you need to do this Libsyn thing and just get a Meet the Host. Get anything up there, just so there's something on that feed, but something that says the name in it, and then it's yours.
Now, Libsyn costs money. It's $5 what, a month?
No,
Or a year?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. It's inexpensive. There are ways to do it for free.
About 5
Oh,
minutes.
5
We
minutes.
Know Games used to do feed burn through Google. Don't recommend it because it's a lot more work.
Yeah.
But you can do it for free. But Libsyn is very cheap. LIBSYN.
Yep.
And you get a lot of feedback and things, like they'll
Well, it's got all the
track.
stats
They do a
and
lot of
stuff.
the work for
Yeah.
you.
A lot of
I
good.
was sure it's different than a business, we just went to get our business name registered.
Oh no, this is so much
Oh
easier.
yeah, that's the best thing. We Know Games is not technically a business yet. So we
Yeah.
haven't. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I think, be careful though, because the LLC litigation can be scary.
Yeah.
Right.
Short TV, like, we had to do a lot of stuff to get that done. I'm working with another publication with my day job that are fighting litigation right now with their name. So if you want to be something, like.
Yeah, if you're looking to make like
If you're
the
try-
corporation that
yeah.
Nerdist, then
If you're
yeah,
trying
you
to
can
make,
do all
if you're
that
trying to make
stuff.
money off of it, invest the money in an LLC. It costs like $100 in Illinois.
Yeah.
Don't do it for the money though.
No.
No.
Do it because you want to do it.
It's a
and
labor
you
of
want to get it
love.
out there. It has to be
Yep.
passion first.
I think I'm gonna have a little route, we're kind of going the route of Hollywood Babylon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would
So
get your
are there
LLC.
other questions? Ooh, very silent. You've been all questioning. No one else? Oh, yeah.
Now that you're doing a panel, does this mean you're famous?
I wish.
And it is.
I was waiting for her to raise her hand, go, can we get ice cream, man?
Right. She hasn't had dinner yet.
He's buying.
Did you have a question, Cap?
I was wondering regards to like, let's say you do a podcast, you start off and then slowly starts getting momentum. The point where people start noticing, want to advertise with you, how does that get to that point, or how do they, I guess they seek you out or notice you? What is that?
I think there's only one up here that can answer this question.
Yeah, we haven't gotten there yet.
My big advice for this is have a legitimate, real well done website for your podcast. because that's how they're going to reach out to you. I mean, people will reach out to you on Twitter. We've had a few people tweet to us, and talk to us. The biggest thing is have a website that has that option. We have on our website with Leave Geeks an advertise portion where you can just link to our info to advertise.
Yeah, and put a rate sheet on there.
Yes.
Basic rates, here's what we charge.
And to start out, to be honest, do not think you're going to get a lot of money from people.
No, in fact, think you're going to get affiliate advertising.
Yeah.
If you think that, you're on the right path.
And that's how it mostly starts. We've got now 2 that are actually paying us, but most of them started out as affiliates. Per click, per purchase, you get 10% of every $10 T-shirt that's bought. But that's the big thing to do. And it's really people will want to advertise on your podcast, but if you build that podcast with the website, I think that's how you're going to get more of that incorporated, because people are going to see it on the web page, because they're going to have that banner up there, and then you're also going to be able to mention it on the podcast.
Yeah, and on Show Ratings we have the Google AdWords. So we just already went ahead and invested in that so that we make revenue off of people's cookies. So that's something that you can also do.
Yeah.
The only thing is, I'm a writer for a website called themovieblock.com. It's an international site. It's got huge hits in the UK and Australia.
Want to do a movie podcast?
I'm in charge of starting up the podcast for that site. And the site's a movie review site, which I'm currently a staff writer. I write the reviews and previews and interviews, but now I'm starting up the podcast for it. So I'm trying to put it on a site that's already kind of well known or has a big following. Is there a difference about that, putting on a podcast to a site that's already, it's like an addition to a site basically?
No, we linked to Southgate Media Group on Show Ratings because we're working with
Yeah,
Southgate
we're partnered.
Yeah, we're partnered. When you get flyers, you'll see that there's one on it. But so we just have the Google ad bar on every single page. I don't know what your advertising is right now, but that's what I know about. Different for sponsorships.
That's the kind of thing, they're telling us we got to wrap up.
Yeah, we're running out of
To
time.
tell you what, you can grab us in the hallway, we can kind of talk about that a little bit. Real quick, I just want to say something. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank you.
I just want to say, here's how you make money, or potentially. We are hosting a party Sunday night. It's free. We just did one today. It was awesome. We did a live podcast. It's at Adobe Hilos. It's a Mexican restaurant across the street. If you want to go see us, we've got tickets. They're free. Sunday night, it's 6 to 9. So it's after the con. It's a way to just kind of blow off steam. You don't know
Lots of
who's going to be there.
networking.
Yeah, lots of networking.
There may be a
There's
few
gonna
celebrities
artists,
there.
podcasters, but it's not a signing thing. It's not like you're going to walk around and be like, oh my gosh, I mean, you might do that, but they're there to just hang. And what's cool beyond that is it's totally a hang. We have the Shake-Ups in Ponyville playing, which is a My Little Pony tribute band, and we have Time Crash, which is a Doctor Who tribute band, both playing that night, 6 to 9. And see us also, you get a coupon for Adobe Hilos for 15% off the entire weekend. So get guac tonight, go back for lunch tomorrow. So
Super quick as well, if anybody is interested in hearing our podcast, we actually have CDs with samplers of all of our. We'd love to.
Some of ours, and
Yeah.
Molly's gonna hand them out.
see Applejack.
There's more of these things.
You got everything to hand out now? All right. I think that's it. They told us to wrap up. Now, if you go to the back of there, you can start handing stuff out. Thank you guys so
Thanks,
much.
guys, for
If
coming.
you want to talk to any of us, we'll be out there. If you want business cards, we've got business cards.
WeKnowGames.com. We need writers.
Follow me on Twitter.
Yes, follow us on Twitter.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.